So if you're familiar with this channel, you know that I talk a lot about raw food diets and why it's totally unnecessary. It's totally unnecessary to eat only raw vegan foods. For one thing, there's no reason to believe that an all raw plant-based diet is healthier than one that includes cooked foods, even if it's like a lot of cooked foods. In fact, there's reason to believe that it's less healthy. For instance, cooking breaks down certain hard to digest components, which allows you to eat a diet that's more varied. It allows you to eat more foods like beans. You can eat beans on a raw food diet. You can sprout them, some of them. Some foods like kidney beans you don't want to eat, they're totally toxic, but you can eat some and sprout them, although I think there's a reason that you don't normally see raw foodists doing this because it's pretty intense. I remember trying to eat sprouted beans when I ate a raw food diet, and oh my god, it destroyed my stomach. And my stomach was pretty amazing. It was pretty good at digesting hard to digest things. I remember eating raw broccoli and having no problem whatsoever. Cooking also removes certain things like oxalates, things that can inhibit absorption of certain nutrients like calcium, thereby improving bioavailability. Now, some vitamins are heat sensitive, so they will be lost to varying degrees depending on how you are cooking, right? You're going to lose more of certain vitamins like B1 and folate and vitamin C if you are boiling versus steaming. But even still, it doesn't really matter because it's so easy to get enough of these things on just a regular vegan diet. A stir fry of 5 ounces of tofu, half of a cup of broccoli, and a quarter of 1 medium red bell pepper served over a half of a cup of brown rice is less than 400 calories, yet it provides more than enough vitamin C for the day and about a third of your B1 and folate needs. And finally, a raw food diet can easily be very dangerous if you are not being careful about the raw foods that you choose to include in your diet. So obviously, again, if you're familiar with my channel, you know that I talk about fully raw Christina a lot. For most of her time eating raw, she's eaten a predominantly fruit-based, low-fat diet, a la 80-10-10. So she would typically have fruit for like the day and then a large salad with maybe a little bit of avocado or some like nut-based dressing at night. This is a diet that is very likely going to be deficient in calcium, iron, protein, iodine, omega-3s, and various other nutrients. She has seemingly greatly improved her diet over the last, I'd say, year or so, just based on her What I Ate Today's. She's eating a lot more greens. She's having like green juices every day, like a lot of green juice every day. She's eating a little bit of salt. She's eating protein powder. But even still, her diet seems far too low in nuts and seeds, which are super important, especially on a raw food diet. It's still too high in fruits. She still has like, an entire meal of just fruit. She doesn't seem to have a source of iodine. And again, just based on her like recent What I Ate Today's, it seems very low in calories. Not to mention just really hard for most people to follow. I mean, who can drink 64 ounces of green juice? That's rough. But a raw food diet does not have to be so terrible. In fact, it can meet virtually all of your needs if it is done properly. And so I am so happy to share with you this video that I just saw today from Kate Flowers. It's her recent What I Eat as a Raw Vegan, or I think it's just called What I Eat Raw Vegan. So it's an example of a raw vegan day that is actually done right. So she starts the day with this apple pie bowl, and I think on the face of it, it looks like just a typical raw recipe that has lots of fruit, right? It's got like apple and banana, like it doesn't seem very satiating, but thanks to the protein powder and the walnuts and the hemp, it's actually got a good amount of protein, also omega-3s and zinc and iron, all of which are often lacking on raw vegan diets. Next, she has this, honestly pretty disgusting sounding green juice. There's no sweet fruit in it. It is just greens and lemon juice and ginger. And because of this, it is full of minerals that raw foodists need to focus on, like calcium and iron and zinc. Now, one important thing to note here is that while many greens, especially dark leafy greens like kale, are considered good sources of calcium, it's not really clear how they compare to raw greens. As I said earlier, we know that cooking significantly reduces oxalic content, which again inhibits calcium absorption. but juicing does not. So if you are going to eat these high oxalate greens like spinach and Swiss chard, it's even more important to limit the amount that you eat if you are eating them raw versus cooked. In either case, you should not rely on these greens as a calcium source. The good news is that in Kate's case, her green smoothie, this specific green smoothie, is comprised mostly of low oxalate greens. Calcium absorption would still likely be better if these greens were cooked, but she's definitely getting at least some calcium from this drink, and it doesn't really matter because, as we'll see, she's getting a lot of calcium from other sources. So next, she has half of this broccoli salad. It's got a decent amount of protein, omega-3s, lots of B vitamins from the Nutritional yeast. I'm assuming B12 as well, that this is B12 fortified, but it might not be. Not all Nutritional yeast is B12 fortified. It also has calcium and iron and selenium and zinc. This is honestly a really good example of the types of meals that you should be focusing on if you want to eat a raw food diet. Next, she has half of an avocado, and then finally, she eats this Thai noodle salad. It's got a decent amount of protein. It has lots of minerals like iodine from the kelp noodles. The company says one serving contains 54.8 micrograms. The recipe contains the whole bag, 3 servings, so that works out to about 164 micrograms, which is about how much you want for a day. She also eats this Go Macro protein bar, but since it isn't raw, I didn't include it for the day. I mean, this is kind of another reason that raw food is pretty silly. Like, what exactly is raw? I mean, she includes mustard in a recipe. Is mustard really raw? I don't know. But I think that virtually all raw foodists would agree that roasted peanuts are not raw. So again, that's why I didn't include the bar. It does add about 250 more calories and 12 grams of protein, including much needed lysine. Peanuts are a good source of lysine, which can be pretty hard to get on a raw vegan diet without beans. That's where the raw protein powders really help. Again, raw, like, can a protein powder really be raw? I don't know. And finally, she talks about the supplements that she takes. She takes both vitamin D and B12, which is really important for all vegans, whether you eat raw or not. Now, the form of B12 that she takes is methylcobalamin. Instead, it is recommended to take cyanocobalamin because it's cheaper, number one, and number two, it's well studied. There's very little evidence on methylcobalamin on how much you actually need to raise levels or to keep them in the normal range. She also takes a B vitamin complex, which is very likely unnecessary unless her days don't normally look like this, what I ate today, right? Unless she is normally not meeting most of her vitamin B needs. But even if she does need some supplementation to help her meet her vitamin B needs, B1, B3, etc., nobody needs this much. Like, these supplements tend to contain exorbitant amounts of these nutrients. It's unlikely that these are harmful because they are water soluble, so you're just going to pee them out, but it is a waste of money. And finally, she takes more biotin. She takes an individual supplement that has just biotin. Again, totally unnecessary unless you have an actual deficiency, if you've been diagnosed as being deficient, by your doctor. I talk about biotin a lot more in my video on Halo Beauty. Okay, so the whole day in terms of calories works out to about 1,700. In terms of protein, about 64 grams, tons of vitamins and minerals, omega-3s, fiber. It's overall a really healthy day. Because so much of her diet is greens, right? Especially dark leafy greens, nuts, and seeds, she is able to meet her needs for these nutrients, again, that many raw foodists fail to meet: calcium, zinc, iron. She's also able to meet her iodine needs thanks to the kelp noodles. She does include a tiny bit of salt in a couple of the recipes, but it's sea salt, it's not iodized. A couple of things that I would say is, first, 583 micrograms of selenium is a lot of selenium. It's actually well over the tolerable upper intake level, which is 400 micrograms. So this is the level that you are not supposed to exceed, like, on a regular basis. Virtually all of this is coming from the 6 Brazil nuts that are included in the Thai noodle salad. If you didn't know, Brazil nuts are an insane source of selenium. Again, this is totally fine for a day or every once in a while, but this is definitely not something you would want to do on a regular basis. You do want to eat some Brazil nuts regularly if you are raw vegan, because it can be hard to get enough selenium, but just one a day is enough. Also, choline is rather low. Now, it often is on just any vegan diet unless you're eating a lot of soy. There's very little evidence on how much choline we actually need, so this might not matter. But if you are pregnant or thinking about becoming pregnant, it really is important to meet the AI, since it may help to reduce neural tube defects. Also, DHA, again, it's not really clear if this is necessary or not, although a lot of RDs do recommend it, and vegan DHA supplements are available. Finally, I personally would prefer more protein than this. While it is more than like the bare minimum, which is 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, it's less than I personally like to eat. I would shoot for at least 75 grams, honestly closer to 100 grams, especially if I'm only eating raw foods, since it's just not clear how good bioavailability is like from these foods when they're raw. The good news is that because this day is pretty low in calories, like if I wanted to do this, I could easily add in like an extra 300 calories of like a protein smoothie, right? Like just a banana, tablespoon of peanut butter, and a scoop of protein powder, and that's an extra 22 grams of protein. So yeah, overall, pretty great. Again, totally unnecessary, but if you just have your heart set on eating raw, then this is the way that you want to do it, right? Lots of greens, lots of nuts and seeds, at least some protein powder most likely, and some source of iodine, either from iodized salt or from seaweed. And of course, B12 and vitamin D supplements as well, and possibly DHA and choline. Oh, and have some money, because this way of eating is not cheap. The kelp noodles alone are $6. And time too, because pretty much everything had to be prepared. And like the problem with raw is it's really hard to do leftovers, right? Like if you're eating cooked food like soup, you can make a huge batch of soup and it lasts you several days, right? It's pretty hard to do that with raw food. We're often making like 1 or 2 servings at the most. Of course, I am not a dietitian, so don't just take my word for any of this. I'd highly recommend speaking to one if you are really interested in eating raw, especially if you are pregnant or trying to get pregnant. Please do not just jump into a raw vegan diet. Please speak to a professional. And really, even if you're eating a like regular vegan diet and trying to get pregnant, it's probably a really good idea to speak to a dietitian, especially if you're new to the diet. Just based on most of the vegan pregnancy videos that I've seen, especially popular channels, the way that a lot of these women eat, it's pretty concerning. So thank you so much for watching, everybody. Subscribe, that's cool. Support the channel, patreon.com/unnaturalvegan, and I will have a new video very soon. I didn't mention the recent What I Ate Today from Christina, where she was doing like a low sugar keto diet, because it didn't seem to be something that she is actually eating. She was just making it because people were curious. It's not like how she's actually eating now. And also it's not keto. She's got like, I don't know, it was a ridiculous amount of sprouted chickpeas in there. Like the chickpeas alone, you're already well above net carbs, right? Like what is it, 50, I think? Net carbs is the allowance. It's like 20 to 50 or something like that. You're already well over that. But yeah, I mean, clearly she has changed her diet quite a bit. So I'm hoping, maybe, I mean, honestly, she eats more fat than she used to too. I mean, I know for a long time she was hardcore 80-10-10, but yeah, she definitely seems to eat more fat. And again, the salt thing and even using ginger and stuff, like that's not really 80-10-10. I think she's used garlic before. Ooh, that's a no-no. Yeah. And then all the juices and stuff, they're not big on juices at all. So yeah, she seems to be steadily moving away from the fruit-based stuff. So that's cool.